Good evening, everyone. This is Mukti Anand. On behalf of Team Campus Darshan, I welcome you all to this webinar on how to crack UPSC. This fact is well known to everyone that the civil services examination conducted by UPSC counts among the most difficult examinations. But as the experts and experienced say, consistency and planned efforts can sail you out through this. But this is not the only thing that the aspirants need to know. Well, there are so many things needed to be known, learned, and kept in mind before beginning its preparation. Our panelists would be highlighting all the major and minor details about UPSC in just a short while. Before moving on to that, I would like to thank Grade Up for their kind collaboration with Team Campus Darshan for this event. GradeUp is India's most trusted brand for competitive exam preparation, which provides live interactive classes, study material, mock test series, quizzes, and much more for over 30 million students across the country. I feel lucky to be a part of Team Campus Darshan, a digital family of 6,600 plus members, which grew from scratch to this in less than a year. It is an outcome of consistent and restless efforts of Ms. Tanisha Goel. Congratulations to her. Now, it's time to introduce you all to our honorable panelists. I feel proud and pleasure to welcome Shri Sunil Oberoi ji, retired IAS officer of batch 1984 and our very own hardworking and passionate teacher, Sir Harshmeet Singh from GradeUp. Please welcome them. Let me now hand over the reins of this webinar to the able hands of Harshmeet sir. Respected sir, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mukti. I welcome all of you on behalf of GradeUp. I hope all of you are doing good. I really hope that all of you are safe and you're looking out for vaccination slots. And as soon as you find one, please do get one. On behalf of GradeUp and everyone else, I would like to also thanks Oberoi sir for taking out time and coming here. He has been extremely kind to GradeUp on multiple occasions, and we can't thank you enough, sir, for taking out time and talking to these aspirants. I'll just give a brief outline of what we are going to do here. So, sir has basically been very gracious and given us about 40-45 minutes of his time. So what we will be doing is, as we know, many of you who are attending the session here are in maybe first or second year of a graduation or class 12, as I have been corrected in the chat just right now. So what we'll do is we'll just have a conversation around the civil service examination, how to start, how to take the first steps. And obviously, there is no one better to tell you about the intricacies of this job than Oberoi sir, and I also know a very important fact about him. When he joined the services, he was one of the youngest people in India to actually enter the services. So as someone who is still in college, or maybe many of you who are still in class 12, aiming for that prestigious job, there cannot be anyone who is a much more suitable person to actually guide you and tell you how to go on that path. Thank you so much for joining in, sir. I hope that that you are well and your family is also doing well.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So one more thing, guys, the chat is open for you. If you have any questions related to this examination, related to the preparation, related to the job, please feel free to ask them in the chat. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of aspirants who have come into this session. So I can't promise that we will take each and every question, but we will try and take up as many questions as possible so that when you leave this session, you know at the back of your mind that yes, most of your questions have been answered. So let's just begin on a very simple note. Seeing that most of the people who are here have not even touched their 20s, most of it they are 18, 19 years old students. And then I have on my screen someone who actually cleared this examination very, very, very early years, one of the youngest people to do that. Do you think that being in class 12 or first year or second year of college is the right time to actually start thinking about the preparation? Or do you think, no, they should just stay back, relax, and think about it later?
Things vary from people to people, but I'll start with my own example. Mm-hmm. As you said that I was one of the youngest, and I think I remained so with one to other people.
Right.
Which was because I was always interested in reading books. That was one plus point, whether it was class 12 or whether it was graduation, I was very fond of reading. Mm-hmm. And somehow, because of my reading skills and because I could read a lot, I mean, on the side, the writing skill part picked up by itself.
Right.
It was not very early for me when I
Right.
started, which was maybe in the first year of college.
Okay.
And true enough, because I did college along with the preparation for the civil service,
Hmm.
it was very, very smooth sailing. So I would definitely advise that if somebody has the motivation and
Hmm.
somebody actually wants to appear, I mean, nothing is early enough. I mean, start
Right.
with the basics, pick it up, and
Right.
it works. It worked for me. It worked for some of my batchmates. It worked for so many people.
Right.
And as we go along, I'm sure we'll tell you, I mean, at least what I think is the right thing to do.
Right.
Definitely, but go ahead. I mean, I would definitely be happy if people start early. Definitely,
Right.
yes.
Great. And just carrying on that point only, what difference does it make if you are, let's say, 28 and you are just joining the services, as compared to, let's say, you are 24 or 23 and then you enter the services? Is there any significant difference?
Are you talking from the career perspective
Yes, a career
or
perspective, the growth, and where you actually end up.
no, 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 not really. No.
Okay.
In the sense, of course, I mean, very logically, the younger you join, the more time you have in the service. That is one plus
Right.
point. But after a while, after a certain seniority, it depends on how well you do.
Right.
We have the departmental DPCs, the departmental promotion committees, we have the cabinet committee on appointments.
Right.
So your age ceases to matter, barring the fact that, as I said, that the earlier you join, the more time you have.
Right.
But your talent, your ability, your hard work comes into play after a while. So I don't think it counts after a point. Certainly not.
Okay, perfect. Guys, if you can hear some sound behind me, there are some clouds that are bursting outside. So happy weather to all of you. I'm in Noida and the weather actually seems to be a bit of disturbance. Anyway, so continuing on that note, so many people who are in college, and we already have questions coming in. How do you actually divide your time? Because college, especially in Delhi University, is not as easy to actually ignore, and then you cannot spend all your time in preparation.
Certainly
What
not.
do you do?
Here, I've got a very different answer here. I mean, I won't sort of very specifically tell you how to divide the time or not.
Okay.
But if you notice, I mean, all of us know it for a fact that human beings are multitaskers by nature.
Right.
We multitask in day-to-day lives without even thinking about it.
Right.
And nothing seems like a pressure. If I can multitask in my day-to-day life, I'm sure I can do it then.
Right.
And much of your studies is linked to this exam. In fact, at a later point of time, I'm going to read out something that UPSC tells us.
Mm-hmm.
But we tend to sort of overlook that. Once
Right.
I read it, I think you will understand what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Multitasking is inherent. Here we have to only fine-tune the study in college to the studying for the exam.
True.
And that can be worked out very, very smoothly. I'll come to that in a while.
Right. Okay. I have a few questions coming in about the book and the book list, etc. Don't worry, guys. We will tell you about the book list. And just in case these questions about book list, etc., can be very easily taken from the GradeUp website also. Go to gradeup.co and there's a whole lot of resources about the perfect book list that you need, about the examination eligibility, etc. So if you have those basic kind of questions, we will try to answer that also. But at least make sure that you see the GradeUp website and see if you can find out answers over there also. So one more thing, as an aspirant who is actually preparing right now, and there is a very kind of, let's say, people actually have this conception, if you actually give this exam from English medium, there's a better chance of you getting through. On the other hand, if you write the exam in Hindi or let's say any other regional language, people actually have this conception that the chances of you clearing the examination are lower. Do you actually agree to this statement?
Not really, barring a very small point here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, the Indian languages, including Hindi or Tamil, Telugu, whatever language we are talking about, the vocabulary to explain things is rather limited as compared to English.
Right.
And I think that is one place where a lot of people misfire. I do not think that there's any bias for or against any particular language in UPSC. Okay. And I think Harshmeet knows that I have had a very close connection with UPSC over time because of what I was doing.
Right.
So I think that bias does not exist. It's the constraint of the language.
Okay.
That might cause a problem, but definitely no bias. Certainly not.
Okay. And just to add to one thing, guys, if you are thinking of, let's say, writing the examination in a non-English language, go ahead by all means. It will not be held against you, as sir rightly pointed out. Just one more thing, and one of the other reasons why people actually opt for English and not other is the availability of the study material also.
Absolutely. Correct.
So many books that are basically preferred for a certain examination, unfortunately, you might not find its Hindi version or a version in your language. That is why people go for English. Also, when you see that a lot of people from English background or English medium have been selected, please see that in proportion to the number of people who wrote the exam in English. Because the largest number of people who write the exam are from the English language background, or they choose the English language. That is why you will obviously see that the number of people who are getting through are mostly from English. So there's no inherent bias, and please take that thought out of your mind. That is not how it works. So there's one question, and I know that this question, whenever it comes up in our classes also, we get very irritated by it. You don't even need to know this, but they still have one question there. Whenever they see an IAS officer, a decorated person like you, the one question they have it, how much pressure did you face from the politicians? How much pressure did you face from the ministers? Is it actually a myth? Or do you really think as a bureaucrat, there's a lot of pressure from the political class and you have to maneuver through that?
Going personally by my example, I don't think I faced any pressure barring 1-2 small instances.
Okay.
But that I think is definitely part of life, because even in the private sector, you will feel some pressure or the other.
Right.
And politicians and we are in a parliamentary democracy. We are not enemies.
Right.
We are working towards a common goal. We might have misunderstandings, but ultimately my elected representative and I work hand in hand.
Right.
And that's how a parliamentary form of government functions. They are my bosses.
Right.
I'm not talking about the local MPs and MLAs, but I am answerable to the political executive.
Right.
And the relationship can be very, very comfortable, like mine had been.
Okay.
So it will depend on person to person, but it definitely is a myth that politicians are after your life. They can't function without me. I can't function without them.
Right.
So it's definitely, I certainly don't agree.
Okay. I'm really glad you said that. At least this will break down this myth. Whenever a person starts to prepare, the one question we have is, "Itna padh ke kya fayda?" You'll always be under them.
No, but if I may add here, padh ke fayda bahut hai, because many of these politicians are much more educated than we are.
Right.
So not to assume that they're all illiterate, certainly not.
Right.
I mean, some are far more educated than I am.
Right. True. Okay. There's one question that is coming on the chat time and time again. I think from a person who has recently seen the web series Aspirants, the person is asking, "What about the plan B? What about the plan B?" So I'll give you my view, and then I'll deflect it to sir if he has an opinion on that. See, guys, one of the reasons why people say it's good to start at an early age is the earlier you start, the lesser plan B that you need. If you start at the age of, let's say, 25, 26, you have a lot of things to look after. Your family is looking towards you that this is an age that you will actually start supporting them. You might have a relationship. You might be now entering into your married life. So you have a lot of things at the back of your mind and you really need a plan B. Now that plan B can be anything. It depends. If you have a good degree, maybe enter the private sector. If the things don't really turn out well, maybe if you're into government jobs, then by all means, there are a lot of government jobs that you can apply for, SSC, the state PCS, etc. But really, that plan B only comes into play if you, let's say, I would say a threshold of after 25, you're still preparing, you don't have anything else. If you are, let's say, 20, 21, I suggest don't look for plan B. This is your plan A. If it doesn't fall into place 1 year, giving your best shot would not make a difference if you don't end up there. So if you would like to take this question and answer from your end.
Well, because I joined very early, I mean, there was no plan B where I am concerned. But I would definitely like to say something here.
Mm-hmm.
Why start on the negative premise that I will not get through?
Right.
You know, if the negativity sets in right from the beginning, then we have a problem as we go along.
Right.
One, let me decide that, I mean, I'm good enough. I mean, I'll give it a damn good try.
Right.
Now, in my case, there was no plan B, but I also appeared for a number of other exams that came along my way because I was already studying for this exam.
Right.
And luck would have it, I passed all of them.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, my father was equally surprised. So,
I would like to just make a small correction. I don't think it was just luck alone that you passed all these examinations.
No, as I said, you know, my inherent advantage was my reading habit. That
Right.
definitely took me a long, long way. But as I said, you know, let's not start on the negative premise that I must have a plan B.
Right.
You know, as we go along, we can start thinking of that. We can start working on other competitive exams.
Right.
In the beginning on a negative premise is something that I certainly discourage people from doing.
Right. Right. Okay, perfect. I hope you got the question about your plan B and plan C, whatever you had in your mind. Give it your best shot at least once. Don't
Yes.
really distract yourself. कि अभी से ही कुछ और सोच लो. At least give your best shot for once and then see if you are actually able to go through with it, or you will know that if you really need a plan B or not. Anyway, one of the other questions that really keep on coming in the chat and in the people's mind is, let's say, and most of the people that they see, like yourself also, their by default choice would be joining the IAS. Whatever rank that they get would be the IAS. There are many people who have a lot of I won't say fetish, but let's say a lot of attraction towards IFS also, the Indian Foreign Services. Would you like to just throw some light on how these two careers are different and who should aspire for what?
Well, my batchmate, because I quit the service in 2008, some of my batchmates continue. My batchmate, Harsh Shringla, is now the Foreign Secretary.
Right. Oh, he was the batchmate. Wow. Okay.
In fact, the present Home Secretary is also my batchmate, Ajay Bhalla.
Oh, okay.
Now, the Foreign Service, there was a lot of takers for the Foreign Service till the end of 70s. In fact, that was the top preferred service.
Right.
After that, the demand for the Foreign Service has gone down simply because of the turmoil across the world.
Right.
And people are not really very keen to spend a lot of time abroad.
Okay.
That is one reason that the demand has gone down. Second, it requires a very different kind of a skill set that I thought I did not have.
Okay.
I mean, diplomacy, trying to sort out things, what we call diplomatically, requires a very different kind of skill set.
Right.
And then the vacancies are very, very few. The IFS vacancies are about 10 or 15 because it's a very small cadre.
True.
Now, if you are keen upon spending a lot of time abroad, definitely yes. But then similarly, IS officers also end up spending a lot of time abroad. The entire United Nations system is full of us.
Right.
So maybe at some other time I'll get one of my Foreign Service batchmates to tell you more about it than I can.
Okay, I have one question that is actually just keeps on recurring. That is one word that actually keeps coming to everyone. Optional. What is the optional? What option should you have? So anything you would like to add to that, the optional, and then I would also add my 2 cents.
Again, going back to my own experience, in my time, we used to have 2 optionals.
Right.
Mine were political science, international relations, and sociology.
Okay.
Now, why I picked up these 2? Because political science I did in college.
Okay.
Sociology is something I picked up because when I looked at the syllabus, I thought it was relating to my day-to-day life very, very comfortably. I mean, there was nothing much to sort of learn in terms of a technical subject.
Right.
So I picked up a subject that I thought was easy.
Okay.
To me, definitely it was because in sociology, for example, there's very, very little technicality involved.
Okay.
And most importantly, why I chose sociology was because I thought on looking at the syllabus that I might enjoy doing it.
Right.
And true enough, sociology paper 1, I think till today, I remain a person with possibly the highest marks ever.
Wow.
That was about 74% marks.
Oh, wow.
Now, simply, I chose subjects because I liked them.
Right.
Not because somebody told me they were scoring or not, because I had no idea. At that time, we didn't have the internet.
Absolutely.
Now, I liked the subject and it paid.
Right.
And because I liked it, it was very easy for me to sort of read and understand it.
Right.
So my advice would be that kindly first look at the syllabus of the subjects that you might have shortlisted.
Right.
See what attracts you.
True.
Rather than going into what marks people have got, because somebody else might have got good marks for very different reasons. Not necessarily you will get.
Absolutely.
So kindly look at the syllabus, shortlist the subjects, look at the syllabus and then move ahead.
True.
But I think the focal point should be that if I like the subject, I can mentally connect to it.
Right.
That's it.
I think this is very similar to what actually I wanted to tell you. Rather than actually asking anyone, and that can be anyone, that can be the person who has cleared the examination, that can be someone who's teaching, that can be your brother. Rather than asking them, at least make a very basic effort to go through the syllabus, as sir rightly pointed out. And I know it's very weird for me to say, but don't even trust your teachers when they say, "Bhai, ye le lo," and this is at night. At the end of the day, you have to write this examination.
Agreed.
Just make a small effort. It's all available online on the UPSC website. Just go through the syllabus, see if it is something that actually attracts you. And you have a live example. Sir took 2 optionals and he scored almost the best, better than anyone else in the subject that he did not have in his graduation.
Correct.
So again, this all comes down to how much interest do you have in a subject, because at the end of the day, optional is something which can give you a lot of marks and it requires a lot of efforts from your end. So if it is not something that you will be interested in or something that you might not be able to devote a lot of hours to, it might be a problematic one. And also bless yourself that you only have 1 optional to study, unlike the other people before 2013 who had to study 2 optionals. So in forest services, you still have 2 optionals, but in IAS examination, civil service, you still only have 1 optional. So basically that 1 optional is good enough. Also, again, how to choose your optional, go through the syllabus, see if it is something that you have already studied in your college, see if it is something that interests you, and then make up your mind, rather than just thinking ki all India rank 1 last year I wrote it from geography, so I should also get it, because that will just not work. Okay. One more question that I have that is recurring is coaching necessary? Coaching necessary? So I'll first answer that myself, and then I'll get Sir into it also. One word, no, it is absolutely not necessary. It's absolutely not. And I give a very small example. I'm in Delhi. I want to go to Mumbai. I don't have Google Map. I will still reach. Somehow I will reach. I will ask people. I will experiment, but I will still reach. But if I have a Google Map, I might reach a bit faster. I might have an easier ride. And that is the only thing that coaching or an expert would do for you. They will tell you this, study this and don't study this and don't. And I'll tell you my personal experience. So when I was preparing, we did not have any online platforms. So when I went to a coaching institute and they quoted me 1.5 lakh, I never called my home and I never told anyone. I was like, yaar, ye to nahi ho payega. So I thought I'll see what I could do from myself, and I collected the resources, etc. It was a very hard journey. And if I would have had maybe options of joining, let's say, even some online platforms for a much lower fraction of a fee, I really would have done that, and that would have helped me. It's not that I did not prepare well, just that from my personal experience, I'll tell you what happens. You study something and then you, after a week, you get to know, oh, ye to galat ho gaya, ye nahi padhna tha. So to save that much time period, you need someone to guide you. That can be your coaching. That can be someone who has actually cleared the examination. That can be someone in your relation or in your relative who has actually been in that position. So I would not call it coaching. I would just call it guidance. You can take it from anywhere. It would just help you in going through that particular journey in a shorter way. Sir, what would you like to say to this?
Completely agreed. In fact, I strongly believe that most of the people, young aspirants who are appearing, are reasonably intelligent people. A bit of guidance, a bit of mentorship is much more important than staying in classrooms hour after hour after hour. True. And just to add to, completely agreeing with Ashmeet. Now we are studying books, for example, NCERT books. Now, as grown-up people, it should not be very difficult for us to read and understand school books.
Right.
So some guidance, some mentorship, definitely.
Right.
To that extent, yes. And as he said that I can reach maybe from Delhi to Bombay without a Google map. With a map, I might reach a bit faster. I completely agree.
Right.
Mentorship and guidance is something definitely, because a lot of people have no idea how to proceed.
Right.
I would definitely go in for mentorship and guidance rather than coaching in the technical sense, in the formal sense.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay, got it. One more question that has come up is, first, how to prepare with college. I think we did discuss that part. That again, it all depends on how habitual are you. So for example, Sir said he was so much into reading that when he read course books also, it did not seem like he was doing something extra. It was just a part of a habit. So it really depends on how you are actually thinking. If you're thinking after college ends at 6 p.m., now I have to devote my time to IAS, that's a different time. That would be really hard for you. Think about how you can integrate the two. Are you studying something in college that is actually common with the IAS examination? Are you in your college and then you can basically prepare for something else? And that would really help you out. And that is how, and to those people who are asking, is commerce the best option or arts the best option in your college? You can decide through that. Sir, I don't know if you would disagree to that or not. I have one more thing, that there are people in class 12 who come to me and ask me, sir, which subject should I take in my college so that it helps me in the IAS examination? And my usual answer is that think about the subject that you will enjoy in your college. First, enjoy your college life. Once you go there, then think about, okay, now how can I use it for my UPSC preparation? Because if from class 12 you think college mein ye lunga taki IAS ka exam ho jaye, that's a long way to go. What would your view be in that?
One, I think they are being rather optimistic, because every parent wants his son or daughter to become an engineer now. not that they have too much choice there. But barring that, I mean, because I had subjects which helped me a lot, because I am an art student.
Right.
I had political science, history, economics in college.
Okay.
And they help me. But now you find that a hell of a lot of engineers are joining the service.
Right.
And engineers are joining with subjects which they did not study in college.
Right.
They are taking sociology, anthropology, geography, etc., etc.
Right.
So it doesn't really make a difference what you have taken in college.
Right.
Take the example of engineers and doctors. They all pass the exam with non-medical, non-engineering subjects.
Right.
I had a slight advantage because I had those subjects in college. So I think that answer to that question becomes redundant.
Right.
We should rather focus on our weak points. For example, answer writing, how to understand a certain subject, etc., rather than worrying about what subject will lead me into the IAS.
Right.
It doesn't happen That way, I think Harshit will agree with me perhaps.
True, absolutely, sir. If you are seeing me in a different light, that's what the dust storm and thunderstorm has just disconnected my electricity. I think the backup will start in a few minutes, but the video will remain uninterrupted. We have the backup for that. Anyway, there are questions from answer writing, etc., which I will try to take. One of the things that people also have a doubt about how to make notes, how to basically start answer writing practice. I'll just give my views here, and then if sir would like to pitch in about the notes part, and I'll tell you one mistake that I did and many. The backup is back. The one mistake that I did and many other people actually did was that basically when I started preparing, I made notes. Let's say I made notes from NCRTs, and then I kept them somewhere. And then after 4 months, when I wanted to revise, I just could not find where they are. And I know myself, I made notes from the same NCRT at least 4 or 5 times, not even knowing where they were. And that just ate up a lot of time. And in the later half of my preparation, I started making use of the online technology. I started making all the notes in Google Docs, etc., so that they're available at all the times. So notes making is a very personal thing, basically. How do you want to go about it? Because we don't know you personally, right? Till class 12, there is a life that you have had. We don't know how you have been used to studying. There are some people who are used to just cramping of stuff, and it's nothing wrong in that. If you're good in cramping, I bless you. You are a very exceptional person. But there is a very simple, different technique that everyone has. So if you are into that habit that you want to write everything down in the notes, please do that. If you are someone who just wants to write the subheadings part and you assume and you can understand other things just by reading the subheading, that is good for you. Just remember, the one thing that I want to tell you is notes making is very personal to you. You are not making notes so that others can refer to it. So make it in a way that you can understand. If you can understand a certain paragraph from just one line, write that one line. Don't write the entire paragraph just because you make a holistic, comprehensive notes. So the notes making part, I would strongly urge you to basically go online. Try to maintain it in a soft copy form. Use Google Docs. It's always available to you. You can always revise it from your phone. If you're lying down, just going through that, the pictures really help in retaining. So that is something that you can apply. But again, that is very personal and has to be from your end. So at your time, I know you did not have this option of going online. Were you someone who had a habit of retaining everything in the mind, or you actually had to write down, or you actually had to...
I did one of the things that he just said. I would jot down points next to the paragraph in the book I was reading.
Okay.
And it became very easy for me to revise at a later point of time because the main point in the paragraph was already there in my handwriting.
Right.
So I didn't make too many notes. I would just jot down the point and underline the basic things. So revision became very, very easy for me at a later point. And it saved me a lot of time because I didn't have to make notes.
Right. True.
And because I strongly believe that the notes are already there in the NCRT book.
Absolutely.
I have to just pinpoint what I need to remember at a later point of time, which will make my life easier when I am revising.
True.
And it worked pretty well for me. And as Harshit said, that it varies from person to person. Some people might retain more if they write.
Right.
Some like me just jot down points.
Right.
So let's not have a template for everybody. As he rightly said, it varies from person to person and your own, attitude, that your own strong points and weak points. Right. Definitely agree.
Right, absolutely. I have a question from I don't know the user's name, but there's a question that comes time and time again. What should be the first step? What should be the first step? I think stop thinking has to be the first step, and taking the step has to be the first step. There has been a lot of talk about that. Go through the syllabus, see what you have to study, and start very gradually. If you just keep on thinking that what should be the first step, I can't take the bad first, that is absolutely fine. You will start to walk, you will fall down, you will start to walk again, you will fall down once again, but don't wait for it. Go through the syllabus, take any one subject that you are, let's say, most comfortable with. That can be politics, that can be history, that can be economics, geography, whatever, and at least start reading. See what this world is about, see the kind of questions that are there, and that will start to build your confidence considerably. What exactly do you have to do? So one more point that people have, and it's a very, I don't really like these questions, but it's a very open-ended question, and I'm not sure how to ask that. The open-ended question, what is one thing that we should keep in mind? Now, I don't know how to answer. What is one thing to keep in mind in their preparation? Any quality that they have to inculcate in order to be successful? Any suggestions on this?
I said earlier that we start with the negative premise that it's a very difficult exam, I'll not get through.
Right.
Why not turn it around the other way? Why won't I get through?
True.
I mean, we normally have a very high opinion of ourselves in day-to-day lives. But when it comes to the exam, suddenly that high opinion vanishes, I would want you to carry on with that positive, that why won't I get through? Like, oh, what is wrong with me?
Right.
Let's change our attitude to a bit positive rather than worrying about it's a very difficult exam, I'll not pass.
True.
Let's change the attitude to say that I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm good at what I do. I'll definitely try to do my best.
True. Absolutely.
Start with that attitude and things should fall into place. Definitely they'll fall into place.
True. Absolutely. Again, if there are repeated questions about the book list, etc., I would just again repeat, we have given a link in the chat, gradeup.co. Go to that link. There are a lot of resources. You will see the book list, because I can't verbally tell you the book list. So there's a lot of resources on the website. Book list, best things to do, how to make a timetable, etc. All of that is given there. Okay, so don't really worry about that. One other question I have is from the answer writing part, how to start answer writing, etc. And my view, I might be wrong, sir, but my view always has been that if a person, let's say, is just starting to prepare, and the question that they have, because a lot has been talked, said about answer writing. So I always tell, answer writing would come at a later stage. At least build some knowledge. Read for 3 months, 4 months, have some knowledge, and then get down to answer writing. From the very first day, just because someone told you answer writing is important, and from the first day you want to write an answer, that is not how it works. If you don't even have content, how would you even go about it? Any idea, any suggestion from your end, sir? Any timeline that this is when they should prepare and start answer writing?
One thing, if you have a feeling that your answer writing is not very good, maybe one could start practicing, but after doing two things. Right. One is first seeing the kind of questions that UPSC has asked over the last few years.
Right.
You understand the questions, then you start worrying about how to write. Now, the interesting point that I want to make here, I told you earlier that I want to read something from what UPSC says.
Yes, please.
Now, that is a point that we completely miss.
Right.
And I'm talking about the general studies paper. I'll quote exactly what UPSC says about answer writing. Quoting exactly from them, I'm adding nothing, I'm deleting nothing.
Okay.
It says, this is from UPSC. The nature and standard of questions in the general studies papers will be such that a well-educated person will be able to answer them without any specialized study.
Right.
The questions will be such as to test a candidate's general awareness on a variety of subjects, which will have relevance for a career in civil services.
Right.
The questions are likely to test the candidate's basic understanding of all the relevant issues, the ability to analyze and take a view on conflicting socio-economic goals, like case studies, objectives and demands. The candidate must give relevant, meaningful and succinct answers. Now, please note here, what UPSC is saying is that you should be able to answer questions without any specialized study.
Right.
I'm talking about only about GS papers just now.
True.
And that includes essays. Now, if the UPSC is saying without any specialized study, then what exactly are we doing? Either UPSC is wrong or we are wrong.
Right.
Or we are not understanding what UPSC is saying, number one.
True.
Number two, as UPSC says, relevant, meaningful, and succinct answers means to the point answers, connected to the question answers, simple answers.
Right.
Now, answer writing will maybe take a bit more time for me to explain. Maybe at some other time I will do. But and similarly, before I stop here, even about essay writing, UPSC says something.
Right.
It says the candidates will be expected to keep closely to the subject of the essay and to arrange their ideas in an orderly fashion and to write concisely.
Right.
Credit will be given for effective and exact expression. Meaning, stick to the question, stick to the topic of the essay, write simply, don't divert, understand the topic, and go ahead. Now, these kind of skills, I strongly believe that anybody can develop with a bit of practice. If you don't have that skill, my last point here: if assuming you don't have the skill and you want to start answer writing, well and good. But have you thought that who will check your answers, whether you are up to the mark or not?
Right.
Now, you will also need somebody who knows what kind of answers UPSC looks at, what kind of answers get you marks, what don't get you marks.
Right.
So one is to understand the previous year's questions, understand what I just read out, maybe get down to answer writing wherever convenient, but also find somebody who will be able to tell you whether in the right direction or not. Otherwise, it becomes a meaningless exercise.
True.
Correct?
Right.
None. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. And that was as precise and as to the point as it could have been. I'll have a couple of questions actually, and then we will just take about 5 minutes of the students' time to talk about GradeUp. Now, one question that we have, sir, is about the fact that newspaper reading. On the past few years, at least in the past decade or so, there has been so much talked about newspaper that an IAS aspirant who does not read the Hindu is looked down upon. And I just want to take your view. Was it the same when you were preparing? If yes, do you think is it relevant right now, or there's something that people are giving too much importance unnecessarily?
The first thing here is that I have never read the Hindu.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I'll
That's
begin
a
with
surprise.
that. And second, at the time that I was appearing, we used to get two newspapers at home, the Times of India and the Express.
Okay.
And I would read them diligently simply because we didn't have the internet or any other source of information.
Right.
So newspapers became very important at that point of time. And that time also, remember, the Hindu was not available across the country. It was only available in Chennai, I think. And nowhere else.
Same, yeah. Even today, it's not available.
Whether I read the Times of India, whether I read the Indian Express or the Hindu, ultimately boils down to the same thing. But now today, there are so many other sources available which give you the news in a very concise form.
True.
So I would maybe go in for a very decent website or a source which gives all the news in a very, very concise format. And especially a source which links up all the news to the news which are relevant to the exam.
Right.
Because a newspaper might give you many things that are not so relevant.
True.
And people do have a problem, like how to decide what is relevant and not so relevant.
Right.
So maybe you could perhaps look at the other option, that some good source which gives you very concise news which are relevant to you.
True.
And reading newspaper today with so much information source, I don't think it is that you have to do it. You may not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think that was a pretty important answer to break the myth. Obviously, many of you who are not living in metro cities, for you, yes, getting access to the Hindu might be a problem. So don't think that the Hindu is the only way to get authentic news related to UPSC website, UPSC examination. As sir said, there are a lot of websites, portals, including GradeUp, where you can get a lot of information handpicked, chosen from by the people who have been in this field and who know what do you have to read, what do you not have to read. So one option is obviously to go with that. Check out the portals. The GradeUp IAS as a YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. We have a daily video on the current affairs every night. The other option, again, if you are still insistent on the Hindu, the other option obviously is that Hindu does have an online subscription also. You can buy the e-paper. If you're really into it, then you can always buy the e-paper, subscribe for 6 months or 1 year. I think it's about 1,000 rupees for a year. And there will be an e-copy, a PDF form of the daily paper that you can get. So again, option is on you. But again, I am not saying that Hindu is compulsory. It's not compulsory. You will have to take a lot of time to understand the language. You'll have to take a lot of time to understand how do you pick up the most important information. Those people who have questions about GradeUp, just give me 2 or 3 more minutes. We'll just take one more answer from sir, and then I'll talk to you about GradeUp in very concise form in just 5 minutes, and you will get all the information about GradeUp. One question that I also have for you, sir, and I would have touched upon that in the GradeUp part is, there are many people who have this misconception, at least misconception for me, in their mind that due to some reasons they were not able to get a lot of marks in their class 10th, class 12th, or maybe graduation. Do they stand at a disadvantaged position as compared to others? Or to me, my answer has always been no, because UPSC only asks you for the graduation part. And then it depends on what was the reason why you did not get it, etc. So it won't be something that would dent your chances completely. What do you think, sir?
I think here again, I am the best example. Because of multiple reasons, I had to drop out of college.
Oh, okay.
I'm a private graduate. I stayed at home and studied. From a university most of you wouldn't have heard of. When I went up the interview, a lot of people told me they will ask you why you dropped out, why you are private thing, why did the university throw you out, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Surprisingly, not a single question was asked. Nobody from the interview board asked me why I had dropped out, what was the problem by this university that they hadn't heard of. I was a slightly above average student. I was never brilliant in the sense, in that sense of the term. So if I'm an example, I mean, of course, plenty of my seniors, my own batchmates, plenty of my juniors in the IS and other services. I don't think anybody has been sort of exceptionally brilliant.
Right.
We are all sort of hardworking, reasonably intelligent people. We've done a good job. It does not make a difference because now remember, UPSC says you have to be a graduate.
Right.
It does not say you have to be a genius graduate.
True. Absolutely.
And that worked for me because I was not a genius. I was barely a graduate. And yet I did. So don't worry about these things. They don't really matter.
Right.
They won't matter.
Right.
Definitely not.
Right. Thank you so much for clearing that doubt as well. We have answered almost all the questions that have come here. If your specific question was not taken, we have taken questions related to that. So I hope that all of that was answered. I will take 5 minutes of your time to tell you about what GradeUp is all about, what GradeUp actually offers you, so that you know what exactly help can you take from GradeUp and what can you expect. So basically, GradeUp, as you have been told, is one of India's largest online education platforms if you're looking to prepare for government examinations, including the UPSC. Now, if you have any questions regarding whatever I tell you, this number is given to you. Always feel free to call on this number. We have a lot of uh, expert counselors who will help you out with any question. Now, when you prepare for the UPSC examination, you have a lot of questions. Many of them have been answered in this session also. But if you still have questions in your mind, and I'm sure you would have, GradeUp, the team of experts at GradeUp would always be there to help you out. And that is how we do that. So basically, you the one problem that we had is a lot of sources, a lot of notes, what to read, what not to read. And I am seeing a lot of people getting over enthusiastic. I know there is a photo of a pretty girl, but that doesn't mean that you'll be very angry at the screen. I understand your emotions, man. But okay, so basically, what you can hope for from GradeUp is to get all the best resources, the chosen resources, at a one single place, to have the people who would guide you from one single place rather than actually running around and wasting your precious time. Now, GradeUp has a subscription kind of a model. So basically, you don't choose one course, just like in Netflix, you buy a subscription for, let's say, a month, and in that 1 month, you can see whatever you want. Similarly, at GradeUp, you buy a subscription for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or 2 year, and then you can join any course. So there are the 2022-23 foundation course that is going on, which will have over 500 live interactive classes. All the PDF notes will be given to you. It will come with the mock test sections, sectional tests, etc. And the teacher would be live and taking your questions. Though I hope the person who has just made this drawing has not taken arts in college. You are not pretty good at it. So anyway, so basically what GradeUp gives you is a very structured approach, day by day study material, a day by day schedule about what you have to study, what not. Each and every subject will be covered. These are some of the students that we have had at GradeUp who have given their views about what they like, what they don't like. They like the fact that the lectures are online, so you can watch them live and you can watch the recorded lecture as many times as you want. So for some reason, if you were absent, you could not really attend the lecture, you could always have this lecture or attend this lecture once again at a later time. So that is one thing that the online coaching offers you as compared to or over the offline coaching, apart from obviously the huge price difference that comes along with it. You don't have to shift your places. Wherever you are, you can take advantage. Thanks to the broadband services that have been expanded throughout the country, almost everyone has access to decent broadband, and you that is everything that you need. So you can access all the running and upcoming courses with a structured study plan, expert faculty, and the best of study material with the mock test, and you don't need to get anything else. So this is what the GradeUp Super subscription is. I really hope that you have taken a note of the number on the screen, because if you have any questions, this number would be available. Just call the number, ask them whatever doubt that you would have, and they will tell you about how GradeUp works. Again, remember, the videos can be downloaded, the notes can be downloaded, you can watch it any number of times, and it is again a subscription model. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. I was also getting a lot of questions in the chat, sir. There are financial problems, and we do understand that. I am an example. I told you when I went to and asked the fees for coaching institutes at my time, I was really shocked. So that is an alternative to offline coaching institutes that you can actually take. There are a lot of forums on GradeUp platform where you can actually talk amongst aspirants, discuss problems and discuss doubts that you might have. So the IS course comes with over 500 live classes, including the classes of all the important magazines like Yojana, India Yearbook, Kurukshetra, practice notes, test series, each and everything under one single GradeUp Super subscription. We start with the NCRTs, the books, newspapers, all of those things would be covered. We also have a lot of free classes going, by the way. Go to YouTube, search for GradeUp IAS, hit the subscribe button, and you will see a lot of free classes happening there. One more thing, we also have a Hindi section. So if you are someone who wants to prepare with Hindi, you are also most welcome to be a part of GradeUp. We have also answered a question during the session about does your past academic record matter or not? And Sir himself broke this myth, so I'm sure that you would also know that. You don't have to be a master of the subject. Sir read to you specifically word by word copy of what UPSC says. It's a generalized examination, and you should be able to answer that question without having any specialist knowledge. So you would be in a position that you are able to answer that. So don't worry about that. Don't think that an exceptional background knowledge or an exceptional academic background is what you require. As I said, the GradeUp plan comes with 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months subscriptions. There's a 2-year subscription also. And also, do stay till the end of the session. We have a special coupon code for especially for those who are from DU. So if you are from DU, there's a special coupon code that will be told to you, and you can subscribe to GradeUp Super subscription at a very, very, very minimal cost. We have a lot of faculty members. This is me, Harshmeet Singh. I teach quality and governance. We have many other people for specific subjects, experts of their field, who have been teaching for a lot of years now, and they know what questions you would have in your mind and what are you actually trying to achieve. So make sure that you give it a shot. There are, as I said, a lot of free classes that are going on the GradeUp platform. You can anytime come and attend it. And just one last thing, we are also in Telegram. If you have the Telegram app, search for GradeUp IAS preparation channel. We have a lot of free study material and short notes there, which you can take advantage of, which will be very helpful for you. And do make sure that you download the GradeUp app. Check it out. If you want to visit the website, it's gradeup.co. So that is what I want to tell you again. It has been a real joy, sir, to have you again, and listening to you has always been very, very enlightening. I'm sure the students had a good time. Mukti, you can take over now, and you can do your bit and conclude the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sunil, sir. And thank you, Harshmeet, sir. Thank you so much. Team Campus Darshan is highly grateful to you for giving us your valuable time and guidance. We hope the aspirants find this webinar constructive and fruitful for their UPSC journey. To make their journey somewhat smoother, GradeUp is offering 60% off on all its courses. Aspirants can avail this discount by using the code DUCampus. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our organizers, Ms. Tanisha Goyal and Mr. Dimple Garg, the entire team of GradeUp and Campus Darshan, and of course, our dear audience for making this session successful. We look forward for organizing more such productive events. Till then, stay safe and take good care of yourselves. Thank you, everyone.